I'd like to introduce our newest sponsor, Swim Angelfish. Swim Angelfish is an online certification program that strengthens your teaching curriculum to serve swimmers of all abilities. Swim Angelfish will prepare you and your instructors with the skills to teach swimmers with autism, physical disabilities, anxiety, sensory and motor conditions, and more. Learn to teach skills faster and with more comfort with Swim Angelfish. Apply for an Only Alpha Pool Product Scholarship and receive up to 50% off your certification. Go to swimangelfish.com today to apply. Looking to host your first swim meet or replacing an old timing system? Run a swim meet with ease from your laptop using Superior Swim Timing. You can use Superior Swim Timing with your existing equipment, or they can provide you with a complete timing solution, including deck harnesses, buttons, and starter. SST is fully compatible with Hy-Tek and Team Unify, as well as Colorado, Daktronics, and Amiga touchpads. Go to superiorswimtiming.com to learn more and be sure to tell them I sent you. All right, Rob Woodhouse, welcome to the podcast, mate. Long time coming. How you doing?
I'm very well. Yourself?
I'm great, mate. Doing really well. So thanks for doing this. Where are you coming from right now?
I'm in on the west coast of Scotland. I've lived here for about 12 years now. Love it up here, and it's a beautiful summer's day, and life's good.
Beautiful summer's day in Scotland. Never heard that, but that's good. I'm glad you get some. But listen, mate, you got an incredible story. I think as an Olympic medalist, most people would say that would be the pinnacle of your swimming career. But you've had a career beyond swimming, which has been astronomical, mate. So I want to go into all of it. For those that don't know you right now, you are the GM of the London Roar, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Right. Okay. And just tell us, when are you headed down to Naples? What's going on there with the team?
So London Roar is not competing in the first week of the regular season. Our first match starts 2nd, 3rd of September. So we head down a few days before that, 30th of August. And, we're looking forward to getting down there and getting the team together again.
Right. Now, in terms of the team itself, you've got a lot of big names on your team. Talk us through just a couple that you can give us some ideas of who's actually going to be there at the beginning and when some others are coming in.
Yeah, we've got a few. We've got a pretty good roster, I think, and who knows what will happen over the course of the season with a few changes of people coming in and out. Adam Peaty will not be competing this season by the look of it. He's doing strictly, as you probably know, strictly come dancing.
So he's not going to compete at all?
No, he won't be competing at all. Possibly towards the end of November, but it's highly unlikely. He wanted a really good break,
right.
and that was in the plans months ago, and well before Strictly came along as well. So he wanted a good break because, well, for obvious reasons, a few swimmers have talked about this. It's a really busy 3 years ahead. So we won't have Adam Peaty, we won't have Tom Dean, the Olympic champion, the 200 freestyle in Naples, but we will have Tom back for November for the playoffs. Kate Campbell will be back for the playoffs as well. But we do have Emma McKeon and Kyle Chalmers coming in, as well as a couple of other Australians, Zach Inserti, who was great in those relays in Tokyo, plus Minna Atherton, who wasn't on the team in Tokyo, but she's such a brilliant short course swimmer. So this is really the major event for her, the ISL this year. So, and it's interesting, we've got a few swimmers like that the ISL is as big, if not bigger, than the Olympics. So, if you have something to prove, or if you are just really great short course swimmers. And so, it's a pretty solid team. And I think we'll just sort of build through the rounds in Naples, see how we go, and see what everyone else has to put up, and go from there.
Oh, mate, well, it's a great team with the addition of those Aussies that you're talking about. I didn't think they were going to be showing up at all, so that's fantastic, especially someone like a superstar like Emma McKeon, who just had the Olympics that she had. And you have, most people might not know this, but you have a personal connection to her, whereas that's your sister's, that's her mother, right?
That's correct, yeah. So my sister Susie is Emma's mum, and of course David's mum. David was a two-time Olympian in London and Rio. So a big swimming connection. In fact, Emma's parents, Susie and Ron McKeon, were both on the Commonwealth Games with me back in 1982, which Michael Boll was also on that team as well. So so that was quite an interesting field or team that was, and from that, well, not from there, but Susie and Ron got together a couple of years after that, and then I guess the rest is history from their perspective. But yeah, it's fantastic that Emma's coming over, and Kyle and the other Aussies. It is a big commitment from them, just because of the issues that there are in terms of getting out as well as getting back into Australia. And those guys will be staying in Europe through the regular season, through the break in between, and into the playoffs. So it's a big 3-month stint for them to stay in Europe for that period. They will be returning home after the playoffs.
Awesome, mate. Good stuff. Well, you do have a great team, and I want to come back to the ISL because I think there's a lot to talk about there, but I want to dig into your story a little bit just to give people an idea of who you are, where you came from. You did mention the fact that you swam at the Olympics and Commonwealth Games, and your family, your sister was a swimmer, and you've got some family history, but kind of just take us back to where it started for you and how it progressed.
Well, I guess it started for a lot of Australians, yourself probably included. That swimming was first and foremost a life skill, and learning to swim was just a natural thing that happens in Australia. And from there, of course, it's just a fun place to be in the water, isn't it? Whether you be at the beach, or in a pool, or in the river, or in a lake, or something like that. So no different to any other Australians. I followed my brother and my older sister, and I've got 2 younger sisters as well. And through the swimming lessons, into a swimming club. And
growing up where?
Grew up in Melbourne.
Okay.
Place called Northbourne in the east of Melbourne, and went through school there until I went to the Australian Institute of Sport. I went there when I was 16, actually. Again, followed my sister Susie up there, and made my first Australian team, senior team when I was 16, which was the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane that we just talked about, and was fortunate enough to be in that team for 10 years. So it was a great time, and as we all know, when we're representing our country, it's just you don't realize it at the time, but there's so much you get out of out of swimming and out of the career and so forth, which really does stand you in good stead for what happens next.
Yeah, for sure, mate. You mentioned you were part of the early days of the AIS too. What was going on during that period of time? Who was your coach, and what was happening?
Yeah, so I joined in 1983, and Dennis Persley was my coach. He'd come from the US and previously coached Mary T. Mar, the great 200 butterfly, 100 200 butterfly, and he started the AIS program back in 1981, and so I joined him when they split the men's and the women's team, I think in 1983. And he was the coach of the men's team, and Bill Sweeten was the coach of the women's team. So I swam with him for a couple of years, and then stayed at AIS when he moved on. He went to a swimming club in Canada and I ended up actually joining him over in Edmonton in Canada in 1986 to do a season with him there. So I've had a great relationship with Dennis over the years, and haven't kept in touch with him in recent years, but sort of followed his progress and vice versa, sort of for the last 10, 20 or 25 years now.
Yeah. Dennis has been around, big impact on swimming world, obviously with the jobs that he's had. Mate, thank God you're a 400 IMer at the time. I imagine there was a lot of work being done back then.
There was a lot of work being done back then, and there was a philosophy of sort of everyone does the same thing in certain parts of the season. He had a thing called Hell Week, which I think everyone pretty much had to do, and it was, I can't remember the exact mileage, but it was around about 120 kilometres, and it sort of built up over a 4-week period. And for the IMers, I remember there was one year where we did, I think in week one of this really big endurance month, one of the sets was a 3,000 fly for time, and then it increased by 1,000 metres each week up to 6,000 metres fly for time. I think 100 100s on 110 once, and long course, and a few really, really tough sort of long sets like 2400s and things like that. So I don't think they do too much of that these days, which is probably a smart thing. They listen to sports science a bit, but yeah, we certainly put the miles in, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank God we don't do 120 Ks. I would have been out of the sport long ago. But mate, growing up in Australia, I have memories of you just, as kind of like, we didn't have a lot of superstars back in the day. We didn't have a lot of people to look up to and to kind of admire and want to be like. And you were certainly one of those names that was around. I remember being a young kid. You're not that much older than me, so I don't want to insult you, but you're a little bit older than me. But I remember being a kid on the pool deck and just seeing you kind of cruise around and thinking, oh, that's Rob Woodhouse, you just look up to people, and you were certainly one of those guys that I looked up to at the time. So I just wanted you to at least know that.
Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. It's funny when you're growing up, you have your heroes, and I was the same. I remember going to the I think it was 1976. The Olympic were in Montreal, and the Australian team was training in Melbourne once, and I went along there as a young 10-year-old, and I'd never even thought about the Olympics before then, and then watched these guys, Steve Holland and various others, on TV, and that was sort of the start of, I guess, my Olympic sort of dream, if you like. And it builds from there, doesn't it? And my hero, sort of 4 or 5 years later, was coincidentally, or maybe not so, but it was a Canadian guy called Alex Baumann, who of course is now very strongly linked to the success of the Australian team in Tokyo, and has had an incredible career after his double gold at the LA Olympics as well.
Yeah, mate, you took the bronze in '84. Who were the guys that beat you in that race?
So Alex Baumann won the gold,
right,
and broke the world record. And a Brazilian, Ricardo Prado, is a great man. I
know him.
He was the world champion, and you would know him, and it was great actually having a couple of the Brazilians on our ISL London Raw team in recent years who talked about Ricardo, and actually they put me back in touch with him through social media and things like that. So it was good to connect with him again.
Mate, when your swimming career comes to an end, what year was that? Around 90, 91, 92, around there?
Yeah, 90 was my last Australian team, Commonwealth Games. And I had a bit of a half-hearted, or a bit of an attempt to make the 92 team, which fell short. And so from there on, I went into I was studying, and I finished my degree, and went into full-time employment from there.
Not long after that, you go into a career that turns into a massive deal for you. You start your own, I believe. Let me get this right. You start your own company called Elite Sports Properties, and go into sports management. Why did you decide to take that angle? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had a marketing degree, and I was working at Australia Post, which is the equivalent of the US Postal Service or Royal Mail here in the UK, and I was working there in it was this Olympic job program, and working through various roles and so on, and I got offered the opportunity to work in TV to cover the Commonwealth Games in 1994 in Canada. So that was my first sort of foray back into the sort of elite world of swimming again. And I was there doing the media commentary there for the TV and loving that. And Sydney had won the Olympic bid for 2000. They'd won that year before in 1993. So with a marketing background and so forth, I started thinking about the idea of representing athletes and Olympic athletes in particular, and doing deals for them and looking after them in the lead up to Sydney. And so decided to go out on my own, started my own company just from the front bedroom in my house, and did that. Started that in 1995, and sort of never really looked back. It was a big learning curve, but it was I guess a risk, but it was a risk I wanted to take, and managed to work hard, and it's paid off well.
Talk to us about the business and the industry a little bit. Maybe even in the early days, who were some of your early signings? What was happening at the time? How do athletes go about, making a living being an athlete, being a professional athlete, marketing themselves? What were you doing? Yeah,
it's changed a lot since '95, of course, as well.
Sure.
As sports become more and more professional. But the first athletes I signed, you know them well, Brett. Michael Klim was the first athlete I signed. I was working with Nicole Livingston as well. There was a cyclist called Shane Kelly, a famous Australian track cyclist as well. But it was really Michael and Nicole and a few others that I really started with. And I'd like to say that I knew exactly what I was doing and so forth, but it was really about a bit of graft and good communication and knowing the athletes and so forth, and then really, really working hard to look for the opportunities and learning as I was going. So I was on a fast learning curve. Within a year, I'd signed a number of other athletes, including Susie O'Neill, who'd just come off the back of winning the Olympic gold in Atlanta. And from that point, I guess leading into the home World Championships in 1998 in Perth, and then on Sydney. From that point, the business just really took off, and it was by the time we got to Sydney, it was quite a substantial business. We had about 30 staff and doing all sorts of things: Aussie rules football, cricket, working with Olympic athletes, doing PR programs and event management and so on, and sort of just continued to grow ever since.
I want athletes to have a clear understanding of what this means, and because obviously there's a lot of athletes just coming off the Olympics, and I've actually talked to a couple of athletes just recently who did pretty well at the Olympics, and they're thinking about getting an agent, like Bobby Fink. I just interviewed him, and he's like, I'm interviewing a few agents right now, and I'm looking at some sponsorship deals. So you can give us the best insights here. What's the realities of the industry for an athlete? How do you select your athletes? Who are the ones that end up doing the best? What kind of deals are you getting for them? Just give us a snapshot of the reality of this thing.
Yeah, I guess I can certainly do that, but also talk about some of the pitfalls as well, because basically the realities are that no matter who the agent is, the deals don't necessarily come to the agent. The agent needs to go out, or manager as they're called in Australia, needs to go out and get the deals and make them happen. So that agent or manager needs to have a very good network amongst corporate partners, amongst kit partners, whether it's in swimming, of course, the likes of Speedo and Arena and TYR and things like that. But above everything else, and this is where it's really important for athletes when they're making decisions, is whether they need an agent yet or at all, or whether they and who they choose and so forth. To me, the most important thing is to as an agent, to have a good understanding of what the athlete's ambitions are, what they actually want to achieve, because it's not about the money. Very often it's about, for most athletes and particularly for swimmers, it's actually about continuing to achieve, continuing to perform. So performance in the pool is the most important thing. So, for example, I work with Adam Peaty and have worked with him since 2014, and it's not about what Adam was going to earn in the first 2 years or 3 years. It's actually all about performance. And even now, after all these magnificent achievements, it's still about performance. And the bottom line is that when the performance comes, and particularly if it's ongoing, like it has been for Adam, then the endorsements are going to happen as well, and they're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the other opportunities will get more and more. So for me, the most important thing as an agent is to focus on, firstly, what the needs and what the wants of the athlete athlete are. Usually that is performance, but not always. And if you're focused on that, then everything else will come off the back of it. You've still got to work hard to get the deals, of course, but really understanding what the needs of the athletes are. And if an athlete can look at that when they're seeing, they're talking to different agents and so on, they'll know. Generally, they'll know if an agent that's talking to them is talking up, or I can get you this deal or get you that deal or whatever. Right. But if there's that focus on performance, then I think that's a pretty good start to the relationship.
How competitive is the business for you as an agent? You've signed Adam Peaty, who's the #1 swimmer in the world. Let's say, like he's the guy that everybody wants. Everybody wants to sign. How competitive is it for you, and how do you then get somebody like that to come work with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I signed him when he first won the Commonwealth Games, so he hadn't broken a world record yet or done anything like that. And coincidentally, it was actually Becky Adlington, who I've worked with for many years before that and still do. She was the one that wanted me to speak to Adam and Adam's coach, Mel Marshall. So I'm very fortunate that Becky sort of cajoled me to doing that, and I did that and met Adam, and he was just an incredibly nice guy, a great human being, and still is, of course. So it is competitive, and I like the fact it's competitive because even for someone like Adam, and we're good friends, I suppose, but it's a business relationship, and if I'm not doing the deals for Adam now or in the next 6 months or 12 months to ensure that he continues to achieve his goals in the water and out of the water, if I'm not doing those deals, then he has every right to go and find someone else to do that job. So, I'm kept on my toes like that. It's no different to being in the pool, really. It's a competitive environment. You can't be complacent. You've got to stay on your toes. You've got to focus. You've got to have a business plan. You've got to set new goals all the time, and you've got to adjust as things happen as well. So it's I think the mindset of an athlete is taking that into the agency world has been really good for me, and hopefully good for the clients I work with as well.
How does it work? Do they sign a contract with you to say, I'm going to work with you for a period of time, year, 2, 3? What does it look like?
Yeah, generally, they're all a little bit different. I mean, my athletes, I think the majority of companies sort of have 2 or 3 year deals. Some try and sign athletes for longer periods. I basically have 1 year rolling contracts with my athletes because bottom line is if the athlete's not happy, I do not want to keep them unhappy. And if they're not happy, it's usually because I haven't done the deals that I would ideally be doing for them. So, that's kind of how it's been. I've had, very few athletes that have ever left, while their career's still been going and so forth. But, the communication is really important, and just that open relationship's important as well. So I don't want to be tying people in that don't want to be working with me.
Now, what's the flip side of this? What's the realities for swimmers? How competitive is it for them? Like, I think a lot of swimmers think, I'm going to swim at a certain level. I'm going to get an agent. And they're going to get me all this money. And it's like this fantasy that kind of goes through your head. What's the realities of it for an athlete?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think you're looking at the Australian experience with the Sydney Olympics. Those guys, men and women, were superstars. Susie O'Neill, Michael Clearme, and Thorpe, Grant Hackett, Kieran Perkins, finishing up just those people in our sport. They were superstars, and they did really well, both financially and of course in terms of their performance in the pool. So there was an expectation, perhaps from the next generation coming through, that if they won medals at the Olympics, that they would be set up and all that sort of stuff. The reality is that doesn't happen, and particularly once the home Olympics move on to the next place, to Athens in 2004, to Beijing, and so on. The endorsements and the interest in the Olympics it changes back. Not necessarily back to sort of the 2 weeks every 4 years, but it does change back. So the opportunities become less and less. And we see looking at Australia as an example, that we see our Olympic champions of more recent times, from say Rio, London and Beijing, probably didn't have the earning capacity of the ones around the Sydney era.
Mhm.
But I do expect that will change. It's just a natural cycle. The success of the team at the moment is brilliant in Australia, but there's the excitement leading into Brisbane, even though it's 11 years away. That will build, and the corporate interest and the public interest and so forth in the sport is going to continue to build as well. So it's an exciting time for them. So, it's every situation's different. It's not about. I mean, it is about the medals and the success, of course, but it's about so much more. And it's about whether an athlete actually wants to do those sorts of things, and their personality, and nowadays the social media presence and the way they interact with fans and followers and commercial partners and so forth is really important as well. So there's lots of factors involved, but and ideally with a good agent or manager, an athlete can learn a lot, and if that's what the area they want to go down in terms of generating commercial interest and sponsors and so forth, we can play a significant role in facilitating that.
What are the situations where it's better to have a manager, and then there are other times where it's better just to not, maybe go on your own and try and work some things out yourself? Because management, I guess, takes a percentage, and that can be great on a big deal, but on smaller deals it could be kind of not as worthwhile. Is there situations like that?
There probably is. It's more. I work with athletes or athletes that have since retired, and they'll now get some, for example, speaking engagements and things off their own bat and don't pay commission, or they might pay someone else who gets them a deal and things. And I've got no issue with that. That's part of growing and part of learning and so forth. A good agent, if they're looking after young talent that's coming through and so forth, and even if they're starting to get big deals, they should be looking after everything. Adam Peaty is an example. We look after all of his media. We work with him on all of his charity work and things like that, and facilitate everything around that. None of that's really income producing, but it's part of the management. And so, the small deals are equally as important to service and look after, and particularly the charity ones where he doesn't get paid anything. They're as important as the big sort of 6 or 7 figure deals that he may be doing.
Apart from performance, I guess there's also a marketability reality in there too, right? It's not just win a medal, make a bunch of money. There's some other realities involved, isn't there?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's this. Well, winning the medal certainly helps. There's a lot of medalists here in Great Britain, for example. There was fantastic success in the pool, but I think there was. Can't remember the number of golds, but I think there was 8 medals from Great British swimmers, and but that's 8 of about 65 medals that the British team won across all the sports and so forth. So, and all of those athletes, or the majority of them, are quite keen to get some sort of sponsorship or commercial partnerships out of that. So that becomes competitive. You compare that to a country where there might be one athlete that does incredibly well, the Tunisian in the 400 freestyle. He's the superstar, isn't he? And you would think that he would probably, if there's those opportunities, would do really, really well. So there's lots of other factors out with the actual medal itself.
What about you personally? Do you branch out into people like that, or do you stay strictly Australia, Great Britain?
Strictly Australia, Great Britain. I mean, I'm based here in the UK, so I only work with the British athletes. Our business in Australia looks after a number of the Australian swimmers, and they look after that. So and we do obviously have mutual contacts and work together on some deals and things like that. But pretty much my interest is from my work point of view is with the British athletes and ensuring I can do achieve the goals that they want to achieve outside of the pool.
Well, please tell me you had a leg up on your sister's daughter, at least. You guys signed her, didn't you?
Yes, TLA is our company, and they've worked with Emma for a number of years now. So they're incredibly busy back in Australia at the moment.
Good. What about the shift then? So where did it shift for you? You're doing really well in Australia, and then you end up over in Great Britain. Why was that shift? How's it gone for you? Where's it at right now?
It was bit of a personal choice, a bit of a business opportunity, I suppose. London had won the Olympic bid back in 2005 for the 2012 Olympics, and so had two young kids, and sort of made a decision to see if there was an opportunity to establish our business in the UK. And we knew it was going to be contingent on maybe signing one or two sort of big name athletes. But having seen what happened and had the experience of going through what happened with the Sydney Olympics, we did believe it was a good opportunity. So that's what happened, and moved over here. And Becky Adlington was one of the first athletes that I signed, actually, and she'd just come off the back of winning the 400, 800 freestyle in Beijing. And Becky, 13 years on, Becky's a household name here, and has been ever since 2008. And I guess that's another important thing too for young athletes looking at agents. It's actually it's not necessarily just about the career where you're swimming. It's about what your agents or managers can do after your swimming career as well. So it's really important to focus on that, and that's something that's been a big focus for Becky and other athletes who have worked on. And fortunately, she's worked incredibly hard since she's retired from swimming in 2012, and has set herself up quite nicely, and really enjoying what she's doing as well.
How do you know what brand is going to fit different athletes? I mean, obviously, let's say you take a company like Nike, just throwing it out there, and you establish a relationship with this company, and you've got friends within the business, but then another athlete comes along and is just not suited to that brand. How do you establish those choices?
It's often communication with the brand. Nike might be saying, I might be pushing a certain athlete towards Nike, and they may say, no, it's not really our cup of tea for various reasons, whatever those reasons might be. You tend to know sort of what the brand is looking for in terms of both personality, the values that the athlete might represent. Do they represent the values of that brand and things like that? So it's not like an athlete's going to fit perfectly for a particular brand and not at all for another. There certainly will be times where a brand absolutely wants an athlete that I'm working with, but which would surprise me. But they're the ones at the end of the day that decide what sort of association they want and who they want it with.
Now, what happened in 2015 with the sale of the business? What was all that about?
We sold the business a couple of times. We sold it in 2001, and the company that bought us went into receivership a year later. So we ended up buying it back. And that was an interesting time. We bought it back and basically rebuilt the business and so forth. And virtually all our client base had stayed with us anyway, and so on. So at that stage, of course, we were just in Australia. So we just continued on effectively. And then 2015, a company called TLA, which was US-based, New York-based, and listed in London, they started talking to us, and we ended up selling the business to them. It's actually been through various sales and changes of hands since in terms of ownership. It's majority owned by a private equity company now. So I'm effectively an employee now. So my ties are done, but I do enjoy what I do and enjoy the people I work with. But I've gone back from being I was CEO of the company for a number of years, and then moved over to the UK and built the business here. But the last couple of years I've just been focused on that athlete management and working with the likes of an Adam Peaty or a Duncan Scott and so on. So doing what I enjoy, and that's where it's at.
Mate, that must be a grind personally as well. I imagine you've done well out of this. So I don't think you necessarily absolutely have to do the job you're doing, but you're obviously passionate about it and loving it. So what keeps you in it?
It keeps me young. I do love the competitive environment of elite sport. There's no doubt about it. And particularly swimming, but all sports. And I do work with talent in other sports as well, but it's mostly swimmers. And it's part of the reason why I stepped up and took the role as GM of the London Roar as well. It's just seemed like a fantastic opportunity and a real opportunity to do something to help grow the sport globally. So it is more about passion and what I enjoy now and so forth. But look, I I love swimming, and I always have, and I've been swimming's been a part of my life for pretty much since I can remember, and so it will continue as well. And I'm sure I've got some future challenges ahead. So there's a few things I'd like to do. So we'll see how we go and see where it takes me.
Well, let's circle back to that then, the ISL. I mean, it's upon us now. There's teams that are in Naples right now. You're about to head out there, and this is the start of the third season. How'd you get involved in it, and how was your experience the first couple of seasons?
Yeah, I got involved. It was actually James Gibson who contacted me. Of course, he was the head coach of Energy Standard, and it's taken that team. They won the inaugural title and just beat us in the last skins race of the first season final, and a great team. But it was James that spoke to me in the first place, and sort of talked me through the concept and the idea. And from there, I met with Konstantin Grigorishin and some of his team, and decided to commit and just see where it would go. So that was I was involved from pretty much day one of the ISL, and it's been GM since. This will probably be my last year as GM. I'll make that decision at the end of the season, but it's a funny thing to say before the season starts. But I was going to stop last year, but then there is the slogan at London Raw, one more for the Raw. So we've come back to for one more season and see where that takes us.
It's a long season too, mate. But so you're in it for the long haul. But well, talk to us about the things that you think have been just incredible for the sport. I mean, I think FINA put out a tweet today in terms of some of the prize money they're putting out now. There's no way that happens without the ISL. I mean, swimmers, it's a great time to be alive if you're a swimmer, especially a short course swimmer. You're going to make a bank load of cash if you can. So. Talk to us about the things that have been great for the sport due to the ISL.
Yeah, no, and it really is, and the ISL has provided a huge platform for athletes and for coaches as well, and we're talking mostly, you're talking about the bucks they can earn, the money they can earn, and so forth, but it's the experience they can get as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw there was such limited opportunities last year. Because of COVID, and the athletes, the 300 plus athletes that went to Budapest for that 6-week period, some of those athletes did incredibly well, and both financially, but more so it was about the experience they got, which then took them into that Olympic season. And they came, some of those athletes competing at the games, I think wouldn't have won the medals they won and achieved what they've done without the ISL and being there last season. So there's that. Financially, yes, this is a huge opportunity, has been a huge opportunity. I believe it, I constantly push because I want to see things done better and so forth. But they're things that can be done better. There's no doubt with the ISL. There should be better planning and better cohesion and better sort of governance and structure. And I continue to push for that. But that's up to the ISL executive to make that happen. There's been certainly pressure on FINA, and FINA, to their credit, have responded, and they seem to be wanting to engage with the athletes more, not just about increasing prize money, but engage with the athletes more about their plans, their schedule, and so forth. But the announcements we've seen, and particularly the recent ones with the increase in prize money for World Short Course Championships and other things from FINA, is fantastic, and that would not have happened without the ISL. So, look, there's lots to be grateful for. Konstantin has funded this all on his own, really, and there's been very little, if any, commercial support or sort of broadcast income yet or anything like that. And so, we I think as a sport and the athletes and coaches and the teams that are around are incredibly grateful for that. But we need to make sure that this, if this league's going to work, we've got to become, as a league, more professional and do things better.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where my questioning starts, because I guess we're in season 3 now, and so we've seen what it can do. I've even been part of the experience, which is fantastic season 1. I was on the other side of the pool watching you two go at it, and it was fun to see. And I loved the whole thing about it too. But we're now in season 3 where it's like, okay, stuff has to start to stick, and there has to be more than just kind of throwing stuff against the wall. And it's so, to me, I know there was a plan in place to have teams like the London Raw being financially stable, by season 3 and onwards, have you guys been able to bring in personal sponsorships that have been able to alleviate some of that stress from taking money directly from the ISL?
No, we haven't, and that is a key to moving forward. The teams have to become self-sufficient, and self-sufficient not just in terms of running the team, but also ideally contributing revenue, which is going to help to contribute to keep the prize money up and things like that. We cannot expect the funding to continue from one man, from the founder. That's the reality. And look, he has bold visions and plans and so forth. And some of these things are out there. You've seen some of them. They are incredibly out there and things that I don't necessarily agree with, but that doesn't matter what I think or don't think. But financially, the teams need to become self-sufficient, but the league itself has to become self-sufficient in terms of generating revenue through sponsorship, but also through broadcast deals and things like that. So
yeah, but Rob, fairness to everybody else. I mean, those questions were part of year 1 and 2. Why are we still asking the same questions year 3?
Yeah, it's a good question. And look, there's quite a few reasons for that. There's no doubt COVID's impacted it and impacted finances everywhere. And I'm not here on behalf of ISL saying that either. It's a reality because what happened in Budapest last year, it was a miracle that it happened. Everyone was amazed that it actually did happen in the end. And those who were there, it was successful, but it didn't get the eyeballs of the world watching it, which then didn't help for commercial and broadcast deals for this year. There's been uncertainty as to where it's going to happen and so forth. Naples was announced a couple of months ago. Eindhoven for the playoffs has only recently been announced. The final, I personally don't think the final should be in January, but that's currently where it is. There's things like that uncertainty, which doesn't help from a commercial point of view and from a broadcasting point of view. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. One is the structure of the organisation, but another is just the reality of the world we're living in at the moment. There is so much uncertainty and there's lots of moving targets. So it's a really difficult time to be spending so much money to set up a league like this. But Constantine has been pretty focused on making it happen. I really think this year's the crunch year. There's got to be some huge steps happening in this season, or else it's hard to see how it moves forward from there.
Yeah, I would agree, and these are why I'm asking these questions. And I'm not badgering you as somebody who's a spokesman for the ISL. It's just more of
that's fine.
More of an insider because I'm on the outside looking in now. I still talk to Lenny and Dave Marsh and some people like that, but. I'm a fan. I'm a swim fan like you. I'm a swim junkie. I got my own swim podcast, for God's sake. So it's like I love it, but I can't keep up with the ISL. I have no idea what they're doing. Like I can't understand it. I couldn't explain it to anybody, let alone somebody who's just on the street. So how is this thing going to stick if someone like me, and I'm sure maybe even someone like you on the inside, can't understand what the hell's going on?
Yeah, no, there's certainly challenges with that, and it's not a criticism. It's Constantine has been innovative. He was innovative with the whole league in the first place, and he's bringing in new innovations. A rating system last year, which not many people understood, and then there's the gemstones this year, which I've still got to get my head around. But he's just trying different things, and he is a disruptor in this industry. That's what he's trying to do. Whether they all work or not is almost inconsequential. It's just like throwing things up, just trying to disrupt the sport and in a positive way to force change and things like that. And that's what I think is the philosophy. That's what I believe he's trying to do. So look, there's things that I don't necessarily agree with, and he knows that, and his team know that, and there's things that are confusing, and I'm sure they know that as well. But we're throwing it up there, and hopefully, as you said, things will stick. This is definitely the year that things have to stick, because it's difficult to see, particularly as the swimming calendar is so crowded these next 3 years at the elite level. It's difficult to see ISL getting the cut through in 2022 if this season is not a success in terms of getting people to watch it and getting people to understand it.
Has there been time for you as a GM and maybe getting together with the other GMs where you felt like, all right, we were heard there, we were listened to, like we had an effect on that? Is there any instances you can give us examples of as a GM?
There's a couple, yeah.
Okay.
Look, Constantine does. He does listen to athletes and GMs, but there's probably got to be a lot more of that. I think to get athletes' point of views and things like that. But probably the best example is the draft. That was the idea of the GMs, which came about from Budapest when the teams were becoming pretty lopsided, and it was obvious that up and coming athletes wanted to be in one of those top teams because they had opportunities to win more prize money and things like that. So the draft was an idea of the GMs, and that was adopted by the ISL executive, and we went from there. And look, the draft itself, it's the first time it's been done. First time it's been done in swimming. If a punter was watching it that didn't understand what was going on or didn't understand the sport, it probably wouldn't have been great entertainment. But again, it's the first time it's happened, and you would hope that if it happens again, there's improvements and it moves on and becomes more professional. But things like that, I guess, are one innovation that has come about from the GMs. There's so much experience there, and particularly when you look at people like James Gibson and Lenny Kraselberg and Jason Lezak and Kaitlin Sandino and so forth. There's fantastic experience there from the sport, but also just people that have the relationships with the coaches and the athletes and all that sort of stuff. So it can't be ignored in terms of making success in the future.
Mate, one of the other things I thought that was absolutely necessary for the sustainability of this thing and for it to work was to have home bases. Right now you have a lineup. I was part of the LA Current. I couldn't tell you the whole team. I wouldn't know. And to be honest, I don't really care. It's just like put the T-shirt on and swim, kind of thing. But I want it to be more than that. Like I want to be a supporter of my home team, but also want to have a home team. So like why doesn't London have a home base right now?
We do have a home base, and London's, I think, the only team that's set up an academy as well. So London Royal Academy has come about through a number of the swimming clubs in London, and it's basically a development squad. And they're actually, as we speak, they're at a training camp in Mallorca, in Spain. And those athletes are from all different from these three different clubs, and there'll be almost certainly more London-based clubs joining them. And this development squad gets together and they compete in a few matches and so forth. And we hope that towards the end of this year, perhaps in winter, there will be a junior sort of ISL match in London between those teams and so on. So there is a base, and London is our base now. No, the team itself do not train there. But even now, as I mentioned, the Australians are staying on from Naples through to Eindhoven, and it's every chance that they may well be training in the UK. So we'll have a base there. We're still finalising all of those sorts of details, but so there is something there. Having it would be wonderful to do like was what we tried to do in season one, I suppose, to have matches in the home cities of the teams and so forth. Financially, it's very difficult to see that working because you've got a very small stadium, you've got a 2-day match, and it's the clusters are a lot more financially viable. And even the clusters at the moment, I'm talking about cluster like Naples or Eindhoven in November for the playoffs. But even those, it's a very big financial drain. So to move everyone around to compete at all the home cities is probably a long way away at this stage. We'd all love it to happen, but I can't see it happening in the next few years.
Yeah, mate, it's such a great concept, and I want it to work like everybody. I love it. I just can't see how it works without Constantine's backing and money. Even the fact that we had this energy standard base where we had James Gibson as the head, and you had this team of people, and then you had a kind of a team, a group of athletes kind of working together and training together. I was like, that's the future. You've got it. And then all of a sudden that went away. This is something that was funded by the man, and that went away. So it's like, if that's gone, there's no hope for anybody else.
Well, maybe. I look at. I'm a big cricket fan. I'm not sure if you're an Aussie cricket fan as well, Brett. But I follow the Indian Premier League, or the Big Bash League in Australia, and the Indian Premier League was the start of very, very lucrative form of cricket, and those teams are owned by shareholders and entrepreneurs and things like that, and they're now financially viable, but it's about 10 years on. So look, I think the future, if it's going to survive and be a success, the future is to have owners who financially can sustain a team and bring in some commercial revenue, ideally as well. But that's probably the future. But you look at a lot of sports, even Tour de France in cycling and things like that. So it's funded by, I guess, benefactors as much as anything else, and that's how they succeed. And but they're able to sort of to grow it and bring in some commercial revenue and make it a good TV product and things like that. So, the intention is there, but we all know that we cannot rely on one person's money to make this an ongoing success. The income or revenue's got to come from other places.
Well, one of the criticisms on that, Rob, is that the money actually wasn't turning up when it should have. And I was vocal on this, and there were times where I was like, just shut up, Brett, like it's none of your business. And then there are other times where I'm like, well, no one knows about this, like as an insider, I knew that a lot of the athletes weren't being paid. And I still don't even know if they've been paid for season 2. I think they have, maybe within the last few days, but we're talking, 7-8 months after the season's done kind of thing. Like, why was there this massive wait on when, athletes had no idea when their payments were going to come. And it's like, a lot of these athletes aren't making money. A lot of them don't have management like Rob Woodhouse, and, they're not making millions of dollars. So they really depended on this money, and it just wasn't showing up. And from what I hear, some of the coaches weren't being paid on time either. So like, can you give us some background on that?
Yeah, but I've got to stress that everything I've said to date, it's only stressed from, this is my opinion, because I'm not part of the ISL in terms of the executive or anything like that. So right. I don't, I'm not privy to any of those sorts of things in terms of when things will be paid and so forth. But you are correct. Payments haven't been made and we're late and things like that. So there are athletes still waiting on payments from last season. And this is where it is also so crucial that this season is a success. And I think we see the caliber of the athletes that are going to Naples, some of which quite possibly, or some of which I know have not been paid fully for last year, but they're committing because this guy's committed to them in previous years. He's paid everything. I'm pretty sure of the athletes, he's paid everything that he said he was going to pay. So I'm pretty sure he will pay everyone, but I can't speak for him. But the athletes themselves are going because they believe in the concept. Like you've said, you're passionate about it. I'm passionate about it. We all want it to work. And that's why this season is so crucial. It's got to work because Constantine, it's his decision. It is his money and so forth. I've got no doubt. Well, I've certainly hoped that he will fulfill all his obligations to pay people and everything like that. And so the money has been coming through way later than it should. There's no doubt about that. The revenues have not been coming through back the other way as he would have hoped that they would have, and everyone else would have hoped they would have. It's not an excuse by any stretch. And as I said, I don't represent him or the ISL, but this year it has to work. But the caliber of the athletes that are going to Naples or are there already or going to the playoffs shows that everyone wants this to work because if it's not there, there's not much else behind it either. It's not as if there's another ISL ready to pop up or anything like that. So we all want it to work, and I think everyone's going to do everything they can to not only make it work, but to help generate some finance and so forth, and hopefully everyone will get paid as well.
For sure, mate. For sure. I hope they do too. What about this other thing that was led up by Matt Biondi, this Swimmers Alliance? What was that joke of a thing?
Well, I mean, I'm not involved with it at all, so I can't comment. But I'm not sure what the role is for the Swimmers Alliance, and I'm not sure if they've been involved with trying to get the athletes for ISL or whether they've been tried to represent themselves towards FINA. So I'm actually not privy to that. I may well get an update when I'm in Naples, so I'm not sure where that has gone. But I guess we'll find out soon enough, won't we? But I think the intention was to give the swimmers a voice, a collective voice, almost like a union. I haven't been updated on that for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the intention too, to have a union and to give the swimmers a collective voice. It was being headed up by Matt Biondi, but from what I know, and tell me otherwise if I'm wrong, but it was funded by Constantine. He's paying Matt Biondi to start an alliance to work in voice and unison against him, or not against him, but to give the swimmers a voice, but it's being funded by Constantine. I don't understand the concept at all.
No, well, I'm not involved, so
I'm not involved either, but it's like, just tell me what's going on.
I don't know. As I said, I haven't been updated on what's happening with the alliance for quite some time. But well, from what I see, their intention was clear, that they want to represent athletes' rights, and if they can do that, then that's a real plus. I don't know who it's funded by or what, but I imagine it's mostly because there is a committee of some sort. I'm not sure whether it's a board or not, made up of various athletes and so on. I don't even know who's on it, actually. So yeah, I don't know where it's gone.
And that's the problem here. You're a GM of one of the top teams in the league, and you don't have a clue what's going on. How does anyone else supposed to have an idea of what's going on? And again, I'm not being critical here. I'm just trying to figure out what's happening, because people in the know don't even know. Yeah,
well, I like to think I've got a clue on what's going on in most things, but the Swimmers Alliance is not something which really comes across the GM's desk, to be honest. So it's not really anything to do with a team. It's the collective of the swimmers, and I'm not sure how many swimmers signed up to it or where it went. So, it's
I'm the same. Yeah, I got the same questions. I don't know. Thought I'd ask somebody, because I can't get anyone from the ISL to kind of come on and talk, because even that seems like it's closed doors. Am I wrong in that, or do I get that feeling?
I don't think ISL will be closed doors, but look, again, I don't speak for the ISL. I'm just here as myself, and I happen to be GM of a team, and I'd like to think our team's very organised, and we're ready to race, and it's been a lot of work pulling the team together and all the logistics around it, the support staff and so forth. We're also working on building that culture within the team, but also that sort of development support through the pathway program or the London Royal Academy and so on. So that's my role, but it still comes down to the fact we are financially dependent on the ISL. So we need to become independent, but at the moment we're not. So that's the challenge we have.
Yeah, you're right. Just shut up, Brett, and get on with it. So who is the coach?
There's all just finishing on that side of it. There's no doubt, as I said early on, that there is problems and there's challenges, and it's a really difficult situation for everyone involved, but everyone believes in it, and that's I guess the underlying principle. But everyone knows, and I'm sure Constantine knows this as well, that that belief will go if people don't get paid and so forth. But it will also potentially go from him if the commercial side isn't developed and so on. So we're all in this. I sincerely believe that we are all in this together. And this season we have to make it work. We want to make it work. We want to put on a great show. Anyone that's been to a match before, like the one in London, for example, was blown away. And we had the London Olympic Stadium, the Aquatic Centre was filled to capacity and things like that. And so the potential is fantastic to make it an entertainment product. Commercially making it viable is a huge challenge, and it's just not working yet. But, we just hope we can make that happen. Right. To answer your question, the coaches, our head coach is Stephen Tigg, who's the coach of, amongst others, Duncan Scott and Kaitlin Dawson, both Olympic champions. So he won't be there at the start of this season for a couple of reasons, but he'll be joining us in Naples about week 2, and we've got a good coaching staff, and we're really looking forward to it.
Is there? I've heard from a couple of teams there's a philosophy change a little bit, because you're going to be there for a little bit of an extended period in terms of the coaching, the way it's going to be set up. Some teams have decided to go away from doing individual work, where the home coaches have a say in kind of what's going on, and there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that all over the place. It seems like they're pulling teams in a little bit to kind of have a little bit more of a team feel, where the head coach and the coaches will have a say in kind of the workouts that are going on behind the scenes, and that sort of thing. Have you got the same philosophy with the London Raw?
Yeah, and we've had that since day one of the first season, actually. We've had a very small number of coaches compared to other teams. In Budapest, we actually only had 4 coaches, including home coaches. So it was a very small team of coaches, but those coaches worked hard with the athletes they were with, but also with the home coaches that were back home of those athletes, and there was regular communication with those coaches and feedback and so forth. So it was a pretty big collective effort from Mel Marshall, who was the head coach last year, to make that a success, and she did a fantastic job, as did the rest of the coaching staff.
Yeah, I really like that concept. I think that's a great thing going forward, to try and bring more of the swimmers together and have more of a team feel. I think that works real well. Look, man, I'm excited for it. I'm sure you are. It should be a lot of fun. Is there any talk of it going beyond just short course meters? Is there been any talk of long course?
Not that I'm aware of. I know certainly before season 1 there was talk of the home team, if you like, choosing whether it was long course or short course. But it's quite difficult to do that, of course, in terms of what's required from a production point of view and things like that. And certainly from a TV broadcast point of view, the overwhelming feedback was short course is better. So that's what they've concentrated on. So I would imagine that short course only is here to stay, but it'd be fantastic to do a bit of a mix and so forth, but I actually don't know. Once I'm out in Naples, and I'm sure there'll be various meetings between the GMs and the ISL executive to find out what their plans are, and hopefully to give some feedback.
Good stuff, mate. Well, listen, what's the future look like for you other than just this ISL? I mean, 3 years to Paris, pretty exciting times, I guess.
Yeah, it's exciting times. I mean, my future will stay with swimming, no doubt. And obviously the management side of it is what it is at the moment, has been for a long time. And, I'm really fortunate with the athletes I work with in that role. I am really fortunate for the 3 years or coming up. This is our 3rd year of being involved with the ISL, with the London Raw team as well. And it's been an incredible experience working with athletes from so many different countries around the world, as well as coaches and governing bodies and so on. But as to where it goes, who knows? I'll definitely be back in Australia at some point. But certainly at the moment here, I'm in Britain enjoying the Scottish summer.
Well, good stuff, mate. I appreciate you doing this for us. This is the first time I've had these little hints up the top here. I had 250,000 views in the last month of different podcasts and live shows that we've put out. But I've only got 5,000 subscribers. So everybody listening to this and all the little gems that you've just got from Rob Woodhouse, hit the subscribe button for us, would you? It'd go a long way. I appreciate that. But Rob, thanks again, mate. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Brad. All the best.
All right, take care, mate. Bye.